Thousands of hungry eyes gleamed in the Arctic darkness. "I cannot fail," I whispered, feeling the 71 Celsius cold tear at my lungs. The ring of predators was closing in, and the only thing between my grandmother, the village, and starvation was my trembling spear and the unthinkable confrontation that was about to begin. Anya felt an icy shiver run down her spine, not just from the biting cold that enveloped her, but from the imminent danger surrounding her. Her eyes, previously focused on the distant horizon, now swept the circle of shadows and lights, each pair of vertical pupils a vivid reminder of the threat. Hundreds, perhaps over 1,000, hungry predators. The spear in her hands, once a symbol of her strength and heritage, now seemed like a fragile twig against such a sea of ferocity. She pressed her lips together, feeling the frozen air burn in her throat with each breath, a familiar pain that, however, felt sharper now. The promise to her grandmother, the image of her wrinkled, hopeful face, was a fire that burned in her chest, warmer than any bonfire she could light. "Patience, Anya." The wise voice of her grandmother, Naila, echoed in her mind, an ancient song of the wind. "The tundra speaks. You just need to listen. Every crack of the ice, every whisper of the wind has a purpose." Anya closed her eyes for a brief instant, inhaling the metallic scent of the ice and the wild, earthy odor of the felines. When she opened them again, there was a new clarity in her gaze, a determination that hardened her features. She knew she couldn't fight them all. Brute force was useless here, a death sentence. She needed cunning, the wisdom that ran in her blood, older than the ice mountains surrounding her. The leopards, in turn, maintained a calculated distance, their slender, muscular bodies tense, ready to pounce. They didn't attack en masse, but waited, testing her courage, seeking the slightest sign of weakness in her stance. Their low, guttural growls formed a sinister chorus that seemed to vibrate through the frozen ground itself, rising from the soles of her boots to her bones. Anya noticed how some, the bolder and perhaps hungrier ones, moved slightly, their eyes fixed on her as if trying to decipher her thoughts, reading every small change in her expression. She began to observe the terrain with renewed intensity, as if seeing it for the first time. The treacherous valley with its steep, snow-covered walls was a trap, but perhaps also an escape. The ice beneath her feet cracked softly with each movement of the wind, a sound she knew well, but which now took on new meaning. She remembered the stories of her people, of how ancient hunters used the environment to their advantage, turning disadvantage into leverage. The biting wind, which once seemed an implacable enemy, could now be an ally, an instrument in her hands. Anya moved one foot just a centimeter, testing the firmness of the ice beneath her fur boot. One of the closest leopards, a large male with scars on its muzzle, indicating many battles, tilted its head, its yellow eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. She felt her heart quicken, a drum in her chest, but maintained a neutral expression. Her facial muscles relaxed, though her mind seethed within. She couldn't show fear. Her grandmother always said that fear was the first prey to be struck down, the scent that attracted death. She slowly raised her spear, not in a gesture of attack, but as an extension of her body, pointing it towards the dark, vast sky. There was no moon visible now, only the icy stars that looked like diamond nails in the heavens. The tip of her spear caught a distant glimmer of light, a tiny point that seemed to vibrate in the air. Was it the reflection of an ice crystal, or a sign from the ancestral spirits? She took a deep breath, focusing on the sensation of the wind on her face. The temperature seemed to drop even further, and the wind howled, whipping her reindeer fur parka. Anya began to walk, slow and deliberate steps, not towards the leopards, but along the edge of the valley, to a point where the slope seemed steeper and the ice more slippery, with more visible cracks. Every muscle in her body screamed for caution, but her mind was focused, tracing an invisible path. The predators stirred, following her with their eyes, some taking small steps to maintain the circle, their bodies moving like fluid shadows. They didn't understand her maneuver, and that was her greatest advantage. Surprise! She wasn't fleeing, she was positioning herself, weaving a trap with the threads of the tundra itself. Her fingers, though numb with cold, tightened on the wood of the spear, feeling the familiar texture and the marks of generations. She could feel the subtle creak of the ice beneath her boots, an almost inaudible sound that only the trained ears of the tundra could discern, a dangerous melody. That sound was the key. The ice cracked, yes, but in a specific way that could be controlled, directed. She needed a plan as audacious as it was desperate, and it was beginning to form, an invisible web of cunning and courage, woven with the threads of her people's ancestral wisdom. The hostile environment, which seemed so oppressive, was beginning to reveal its secrets, whispering possibilities in her ear. The icy air cut Anya's skin, but her thoughts were sharper than the wind. The dangerous melody of the ice creaking beneath her boots was a whisper of possibilities, not despair. She remembered Nyla, her grandmother, sitting by the fire, wise eyes fixed on the flickering flames, telling stories of hunters who danced with the tundra, not against it. "The ice is a mirror, Anya," Nyla had once said. "It reflects what you show it. If you respect it, it can be your friend." Anya took a deep breath, the vapor freezing on her lips, and felt the truth of those words take root in her heart. She wasn't just walking. She was conversing with the ice, feeling its pulse. The leopards, confused by her unexpected calm, kept their distance, but their growls became more frequent, more impatient. Their eyes, previously only hungry, now showed a hint of irritation. They expected panic, a desperate run, but Anya offered them only a slow, calculated dance. One of the felines, the scarred male, stepped forward, claws partially exposed, a silent warning. Anya didn't avert her gaze. Instead, she raised her spear again, not to threaten, but to point to a specific spot on the steep valley slope, where a slender rock formation jutted out, covered by a thin layer of slippery ice. She knew that the ice, though treacherous, had its own language. The cracks she discerned were not random. They were veins, paths of fragility that, if touched with precision, could be transformed into barriers. She began to move with more purpose, but still with deliberate slowness, as if measuring every inch of the ground. Her feet made small testing movements, lightly pressing the ice at strategic points, like a craftsman molding clay. She didn't want to break the ice yet, but rather to prepare it, subtly weaken it. The wind, her old enemy, now seemed a potential ally. It howled, raising small whirlwinds of snow and powdered ice, obscuring vision for brief moments. Anya would use this. She slightly quickened her pace during one of these stronger gusts, gaining a few meters towards her objective on the slope. The leopards reacted, some rushing to close the gap, but the strong wind slowed them, making them blink and hesitate. The advantage of surprise was beginning to manifest. Her fingers tightened on the spear, and she felt the warmth of the wood, a connection to all her ancestors who had held it before her. The promise to Nyla and the village echoed in her chest, giving her a strength that went beyond her muscles. She was not just a young hunter. She was a link in a millennial chain of resilience. Every step she took was an act of faith, a silent prayer to the spirits of the tundra. Reaching the base of the rock formation, Anya stopped. The ice there was thicker, but the slope above her was a challenge. She looked at the leopards, who were now closer, their growls louder, their patience wearing thin. They formed a semicircle, flanks touching, ready for the final attack. Their eyes gleamed with a wild intensity, and Anya could feel the warmth of their bodies, even from a distance. It was now or never. She raised her spear, not to attack, but to firmly plant it in the ice in front of her, using it as a foothold. With a quick, fluid movement, she began to climb the rock formation, using the small cracks and ledges, her fur-booted feet finding purchase where there seemed to be none. The leopards roared, realizing her maneuver, and began to run towards her, their agile bodies sliding over the ice. Anya knew she had only seconds. She had to turn the environment into her weapon, and the time to act was now. Anya, with the agility of a tundra gazelle, propelled herself upwards, her calloused fingers gripping the icy rock crevices. The leopards' roars echoed in the valley, transforming into a chorus of fury and frustration. They were too close, their slender, muscular bodies leaping over the ice, claws scraping the surface. Anya felt the heat of the pursuit on her back, but didn't look back. Her eyes were fixed on the highest point of the formation, where a wider ledge offered brief refuge. Upon reaching the top, she turned, her spear now firmly gripped, not for attack, but for a more strategic purpose. The leopards stopped abruptly at the base of the rock, some attempting to climb, but the slippery ice and steep incline prevented them. They growled, frustrated, their eyes fixed on her with ravenous intensity. Anya knew she had a short window of time. The wind howled, bringing with it snowflakes that danced around her, creating an ephemeral curtain. She took a deep breath, the icy air burning in her lungs. She remembered her grandmother's words. "The ice has memory, Anya. It remembers every step, every weight. If you know it, it can be your ally." With the tip of her spear, Anya began to strike the ice at a specific point on the rock, just below where she stood. They weren't strong blows, but precise, rhythmic ones, like a hammer striking a bell. She sought the veins of fragility she had discerned, the invisible cracks that extended beneath the surface. The leopards, curious and irritated, watched her. The scarred male, bolder, attempted a new charge, leaping forcefully against the base of the rock. The impact reverberated, and Anya felt the vibration in the ice beneath her feet. It was the signal she had been waiting for. She intensified her spear strikes, now with more force, aiming at the exact point where the ice met the rock, creating a line of tension. Suddenly, a loud, deep crack tore through the air, muffling the wind's howls and the leopard's growls. A thin, almost imperceptible crack began to form, rapidly extending across the surface of the ice covering the slope. The leopards instinctively recoiled, their wild instincts alerting them to the imminent danger. The crack deepened, and a piece of the ice layer, the size of a small sled, broke off with a dry sound, sliding down the steep, slippery slope. It wasn't an avalanche, but a barrier. The ice block, as it fell, broke into several smaller but still substantial pieces which spread across the base of the slope, creating an irregular and unstable obstacle. The leopards, confused and cautious, stopped, their eyes fixed on the ice blocks that now blocked their direct path to Anya. They could go around, of course, but that would cost them precious time and force them to disperse. Anya wasted no time. With the passage temporarily blocked, she began to move quickly along the rock ledge, seeking an escape route that would lead her out of the valley. The wind, which once seemed an implacable enemy, was now her accomplice, raising clouds of snow that obscured her silhouette and helped her blend into the environment. She could feel the adrenaline pulsing in her veins, but her mind was clear, focused. She looked back for an instant. The leopards were regrouping, some trying to climb the ice blocks, others looking for an alternative path. Her strategy had worked, giving her a crucial advantage. The valley, once a deadly trap, now became an escape corridor, and the ice, her potential executioner, had transformed into her shield. Anya felt a glimmer of hope, a warmth that didn't come from fire, but from the resilience of her spirit. The promise to her grandmother seemed closer to being fulfilled. Her ancestors guided her, and the tundra, finally, was whispering its secrets. She had to continue, each step a prayer, each movement a continuous dance with life and death. Anya didn't allow herself to stop. The relief from the ice barrier was just a pause. Her eyes swept the landscape, searching for the tundra's next secret. The wind, her ally, whipped the snow, creating white veils that helped her move unseen. She crouched, muscles tense, her spear a balancing stick. The distant growls of the leopards echoed, relentless reminders. She heard the scraping of claws on the ice, the rustling of snow. The predator's intelligence was frightening. They wouldn't give up. Anya needed not only to escape, but to create an opportunity for hunting and feeding her village. Grandmother Naylor depended on her. "Think like the fox, Anya." Naylor's voice resonated, soft as snow. "Cunning is not cowardice, it's survival." Anya smiled, a fleeting warmth. She wasn't fleeing out of fear, but to find the best position. She continued along the ledge, her feet reading every vibration of the ice. The valley narrowed, the rocky walls forming a corridor. Dangerous, but a funnel, where she would concentrate the predator's force and turn it against them. Anya stopped, her eyes fixed on a narrow crevice in the opposite wall, almost hidden by the snow. A passage that seemed to lead out of the valley, but so tight that only she could pass through. The ice on the ground seemed thinner, susceptible to cracks. An audacious idea was forming, demanding precision and courage. The leopards, bypassing the barrier, approached, their growls strong and impatient. They formed a wave of shadows and gleaming eyes, filling the valley. Anya knew time was short. She had to act. With a decisive movement, Anya ran towards the crevice, her spear swinging for balance. The leopards reacted with a collective roar, accelerating, becoming a blur of speed. She felt the air stir, the wild scent intensify. Her lungs burned, but she didn't slow down. She plunged into the crevice, squeezing through, her spear scraping against the icy walls. The leopards, too large, stopped at the entrance, bodies piled up, growling and scratching at the ice. Anya was safe, but trapped. She turned, spear pointed at the entrance, eyes fixed on the predators. The plan was risky, lure them onto the thin ice of the crevice. With her spear, Anya rhythmically struck the ice floor, creating a hollow, reverberating sound. She wasn't attacking, but provoking, testing the ice's fragility. The irritated leopards responded with loud roars, some trying to bite the edges of the crevice, others scratching furiously. Anya felt the ice beneath her feet vibrate with each strike, each roar. The temperature seemed to drop. The wind howled through the crevice, a ghostly chorus. She was at her limit. The next step would be decisive. The promise to her grandmother, the image of Nyla, was the strength that propelled her. She had to transform despair into strategy, danger into opportunity. She was not a hunter. She was the guardian of a lineage. And the tundra, once again, would be her ally. With her spear, Anya continued to strike the ice, now with a calculated rhythm, aiming at points of fragility. The leopards piled up at the crevice entrance, growling and scratching, their eyes burning with rage. The scarred male tried to force his head in, fangs bared, a guttural warning. Anya closed her eyes, visualizing the ice map in her mind, as Naylor had taught her. "Ice is like life, Anya," her grandmother had whispered, "full of strengths and weaknesses. Know them, and you will know yourself." She opened her eyes, determination hardening her jaw. She couldn't hesitate. Each strike was an act of faith. The ice responded. A sharp crack, louder than the growls, echoed. A thin crack, like a spider's thread, extended from the point where Anya struck, winding across the passage floor. The leopards recoiled, instincts alerting them, but hunger and frustration kept them trapped. They didn't understand the subtlety, only that the barrier was changing. The crack deepened, and Anya felt the ice beneath her feet give way. She moved quickly to a firmer spot, continuing to strike the separating ice. The weakened upper layer broke off into sharp fragments that fell into the void, revealing a deeper, darker chasm. The leopards roared in alarm. The crevice, once a vertical barrier, now had an unexpected abyss. They stirred, some trying to jump the new gap, but the width and instability of the edges prevented them. The scarred male, with a roar of fury, tried to force his way through, but his paws slipped on the exposed ice, and he fell to the edge, scratching himself and recoiling with a growl of pain and rage. Anya watched, heart-pounding, mind clear. The tundra had responded. The crevice was impassable for the leopards for a time. She had created a natural barrier using the valley's structure. The scent of ice and snow mingled with the wild odor of the felines, but now there was disorientation in the air. With the passage blocked, Anya turned, looking for an exit at the other end. The crevice opened into a small clearing, sheltered from the wind, with deep snow and visible animal tracks. A fresh trail of snow hares. The hunt. She felt exhaustion, but also triumph. The promise to her grandmother and the village gave her new energy. She had not only escaped, she had turned the tables. The tundra, with its secrets, had become her ally. With one last look at the leopards, who were retreating in frustration, Anya exited the narrow passage. Her eyes swept the clearing, following the trail. The hunt was far from over, but the first battle had been won. The resilience of her people, Nyla's wisdom, shone in her like the Arctic sun. Anya emerged from the narrow passage, her eyes sweeping the clearing with the agility of a hawk. The deep snow, untouched by the wind, revealed delicate snow hare tracks, a fresh trail leading her into the heart of the small, sheltered area. The air, though icy, felt less biting there, offering a brief respite from the incessant howl of the valley. She gripped her spear, feeling the familiar weight of the wood in her hands, and began to follow the marks, each step calculated not to disturb the tundra's silence, a careful dance with the environment. The promise to Nyla and the village echoed in her chest, a persistent warmth that propelled her. The hares were small, yes, but their meat and fur would be a vital start, a sign that the tundra could still provide. Anya moved with silent grace, her trained eyes reading every sign on the frozen ground, a broken twig, a turned moss leaf, a small tuft of white fur caught on a bush. She knew that hunting demanded deep patience and respect, an ancestral dance between hunter and hunted. After a few minutes of careful tracking, Anya spotted the first hare, perfectly camouflaged against the snow, except for the dark, alert eyes that watched her. Anya's heart quickened, but she remained calm, raising her spear slowly, with the precision of one who knows every curve of the wind and every subtle tremor of the ground. With a quick, fluid movement, the spear flew, hitting its target with a dull, accurate thud. The hare fell, and Anya felt a mix of relief and sincere gratitude. It was a start. She hunted 2 more hares in the next 20 minutes, using the same silent and effective technique. 3 hares. It was something, yes, but as she looked at the small bodies in the snow, a feeling of inadequacy washed over her. The village was large, and Nyla, her grandmother, needed much more than this to regain strength. Hunger was a voracious enemy, and 3 hares were only a temporary postponement, not a lasting victory. The hope, which had briefly blossomed, began to wither under the weight of harsh reality. Anya sighed, the vapor freezing on her lips. She knew she needed something much more substantial. It was then that, while examining the ground for more hare tracks, her eyes stopped on something completely different. Further on, at the edge of the clearing, where the snow was thicker, there were much larger, deep and wide marks that did not belong to any hare. They were the footprints of a large animal, perhaps a moose or a bison, a true giant of the tundra. Her heart leaped. Prey of that size could feed the village for days, perhaps weeks, warding off the shadow of hunger. But joy was quickly replaced by a sharp pang of apprehension. Such a large animal was too dangerous to hunt alone, especially with the threat of the 1,300 leopards still hanging in the air. And, as if to confirm her worst fears, she noticed something else. Among the large animal's tracks, there were other marks, more subtle but unmistakable. the claws and paws of the leopards. They too had found the trail. Anya felt a shiver run down her spine, not just from the relentless cold. The predators were not as far as she thought, and they were following the same path. The competition for prey had become even fiercer and more direct. The turning point was clear. The hunt had transformed from a search for sustenance into a desperate race against time and against the leopards themselves. She had to reach the large animal before them, or the village would face an even crueler famine. The tundra once again presented a challenge that would test every fiber of her courage and ancestral wisdom. Anya didn't hesitate. The shiver down her spine wasn't from fear, but from an icy clarity. The promise to Naila, the image of hungry faces in the village, was a fire burning in her chest, stronger than the 71°C cold. She could not fail, not after everything. With the 3 small hair bodies carefully tied to her waist, Anya began to follow the large animal's tracks, her eyes fixed on the ground, but her mind alert to every shadow, every sound. She knew the tundra was an open book for those who knew how to read it. The leopard tracks, superimposed on those of the moose or bison, told a story of recent pursuit. They were hungry, desperate, and the prey was large enough to satisfy many of them. Anya felt the urgency in the air, could almost hear the silent growls of the felines in her mind. She needed to be faster, more cunning. "Think like the snow, Anya." Naila's voice echoed in her memory, silent but relentless. It covers everything, but reveals its secrets to those who know how to look. Anya took a deep breath, the vapor freezing in her nostrils. She became the snow, moving with an almost supernatural lightness, her feet barely disturbing the untouched surface. The spear, now an extension of her arm, served as a sensor, testing the depth of the snow, the firmness of the ice. The large animal's trail was impressive. The footprints were like small craters in the snow, indicating the creature's colossal weight. From time to time, a broken branch or a tuft of dark fur caught on a bush confirmed its recent passage. But increasingly, the leopard marks became sharper, more abundant. Anya could see where they had stopped, sniffed the air, where they had grouped. They were gaining ground. The landscape began to change. The clearing gave way to a denser area of gnarled bushes and low trees covered by a thick layer of ice, like ghostly sculptures. The wind, which had previously helped her hide, was now an obstacle, raising clouds of snow that obscured her vision. But Anya saw an opportunity in this. The leopards, despite their keen eyesight, would also be affected. She moved among the bushes, using them as cover, bending, crawling when necessary. Her fingers tingled with cold, but she couldn't stop. With each step, the image of Naila, her eyes full of hope, propelled her. The village depended on her to bring the hunt, to ward off the hunger that threatened to extinguish the light of their lives. Suddenly, a sound, not a growl but a distant rustle, a movement in the snow that wasn't the wind. Anya stopped, her heart pounding in her chest. She crouched behind a frozen bush, her spear raised, her eyes sweeping the landscape. There, about 100 meters away, a dark shape moved among the trees. A leopard. And another. And another. They were approaching, forming a semicircle surrounding the prey. Anya felt an icy despair. They were ahead of her. The race had reached a critical point. But then, she noticed something else. The leopards weren't attacking. They seemed hesitant, cautious. What was stopping them? She squinted, trying to discern the scene through the veil of snow. The large animal was there, yes, but not alone. There were others. There were 2. An imposing adult and a calf, smaller but still robust. The mother moose, or bison, stood over her calf, protecting it with her massive body, her imposing antlers or horns pointed at the predators. She snorted, stomping her hooves on the ground, a courageous challenge. The leopards, though overwhelmingly numerous, did not directly attack the fury of a mother protecting her young. They circled, waiting for a weakness, a mistake. Anya understood. The situation was more complex than just hunting. It was a matter of life and death for the tundra family. And suddenly, a new idea, audacious and risky, began to form in her mind. She couldn't simply hunt the large animal. She had to intervene somehow, to change the balance of that battle, to secure the hunt without becoming part of the carnage. Nyla's wisdom whispered, "Anya, the greatest strength is not in fighting against, but in finding a way with." She had to find a way. The fate of the village and that tundra family depended on it. Anya observed the scene, her heart pounding, but her mind working at dizzying speed. The image of the mother moose, her eyes full of protective fury, defending her calf, touched a deep chord within her. It wasn't just a hunt, it was the life of a tundra family at stake. And Nyla's wisdom resonated. The greatest strength is not in fighting against, but in finding a way with. Anya needed a path that honored life, but also saved her village from hunger. Her eyes swept the landscape, seeking not a weapon, but a solution. She noticed that the leopards, despite their overwhelming numbers, maintained a cautious distance, circling in a predictable pattern. They were hungry, yes, but also opportunistic. Waiting for the right moment, for weakness, the mother moose stomped her hooves on the ground, kicking up snow, and Anya realized that the ground there, though covered, seemed less solid, more prone to giving way under pressure. A risky but brilliant idea ignited in her mind. She couldn't confront the predators directly, nor could she allow them to win. With a silent movement, Anya began to move to the side, away from the center of the confrontation, but remaining visible to the closest leopards. She wanted to attract attention, but not an attack. Her steps were light, almost like the wind, as she headed for a specific point on the opposite slope, where a layer of ice seemed precariously suspended over a small depression. The leopards noticed her movement. Some growled, diverting their gazes from the moose to Anya's solitary figure. The scarred male, with a low growl, began to move towards her, followed by a small group. It was exactly what Anya wanted. She continued, feigning a hurried but calculated escape, her feet reading the terrain. Upon reaching the desired point, she turned, her spear raised, not as a threat, but as a focal point. With the tip of her spear, Anya began to strike the ice at the base of the slope, not where she stood, but slightly below, in the direction of the leopards following her. They weren't strong blows, but rhythmic, precise ones, seeking the veins of fragility that the ice held. The leopards stopped, curious and irritated, not understanding the strategy. The scarred male took a step forward, ready to charge. Suddenly, Anya shifted her focus. Instead of striking the ice below, she aimed at a higher point, where a large mass of soft snow had accumulated, held by a thin layer of ice. With a precise and strong blow, she hit the weak spot. A dry crack echoed, and the snow, heavy and fluffy, began to slide down the slope, not in a devastating avalanche, but in a controlled cascade that spread among the leopards. The snow didn't injure them, but disoriented them. They growled, coughing and shaking their heads, their movements hampered by the white mass that covered them. Their vision was temporarily obscured, and the scent of fresh snow masked the moose's trail. It was the chance the mother moose had been waiting for. With a powerful snort, she turned and, with her calf by her side, bolted into the forest of gnarled bushes, quickly disappearing into the snow haze raised by the wind. Anya felt immense relief. The tundra family was safe, at least for now. But her mission wasn't over. The leopards, furious and confused, began to regroup, their growls echoing with new intensity. They had lost their primary prey, and now, with Anya's vision clear again, she became the focus of their frustration. But Anya already had a new plan. The snow disturbance had revealed something else. A little further on, at the edge of the clearing, there was a small ice elevation, almost a mound, that she hadn't noticed before. And beside it, a dark shape, semi-buried in the snow. It wasn't a living animal, but what appeared to be a young moose, fallen perhaps from illness or exhaustion, and which had been covered by snow and ice. The leopards, focused on the mother moose and calf, hadn't noticed it. It was the prey she needed, a gift from the tundra, a solution that didn't require violence but cunning and speed. Anya knew she had to act fast. Before the leopards discovered it, the race for the village's survival was about to reach its conclusion, and the tundra, in its merciless generosity, had shown the way. Anya didn't waste a second. The fallen moose, an unexpected gift from the tundra, was the answer to her prayers and the village's despair. With the 3 small hair bodies still tied to her waist, she darted towards the dark, semi-buried shape, her agile feet gliding over the compacted snow. The icy air cut her lungs, but the urgency in her chest was a fire that propelled her. She felt the leopard's eyes on her, their silent rage transforming into a collective growl as the confusion from the snow cascade dissipated. They had lost the living prey, and now Anya's solitary figure, running towards something they hadn't yet discerned, became the new focus of their fury. Upon reaching the ice mound, Anya threw herself beside the moose. It was a young one, robust, with dense, dark fur, covered by a thin layer of ice and snow. Its eyes were closed and there were no signs of external injuries, just the stillness of death. A sigh of gratitude escaped Anya's lips. It was perfect, but the leopards were approaching, their dark, agile silhouettes moving quickly across the clearing. The scarred male led the charge, his eyes fixed on the newly discovered prey. Anya knew she couldn't move the moose alone. It was too heavy, a mountain of flesh and bones, but she could protect it, at least for a while. Her eyes swept the terrain. The ice mound beside her was solid, a small natural fortress. The surrounding snow, though deep, was malleable. With her spear, Anya began to frantically dig around the moose's body, using the shaft to push away loose snow and ice, creating an improvised barrier. She worked with impressive speed, her muscles burning, her hands numb, but her mind clear. Each strike of the spear into the snow was an act of defiance against the approaching predators. The leopards stopped at a safe distance, circling, growling, confused by Anya's new strategy. They saw the prey, smelled it, but the young YAKUT woman seemed to be building something, an invisible barrier of determination. The scarred male took a step forward, testing. Anya rose, her spear pointed at him, not as a weapon to wound, but as a boundary, a warning. Her eyes met his, and for an instant, animal fury met unyielding human will. She continued to work, now using the snow itself to cover the moose, camouflaging it further. It wasn't perfect protection, but it was enough to make immediate access difficult for the leopards. They would need to dig, and that would buy her time. Time for what? Anya wasn't sure, but ancestral wisdom whispered in her mind. Anya, the tundra always reveals a next step to those who know how to wait and observe. The leopard pack, now in a tight semicircle, growled with increasing impatience. They sniffed the air, frustration evident in their movements. But the moose, now almost completely covered by snow and partially protected by the ice mound, seemed less accessible than before. Anya had turned the prey into an enigma for them. She was exhausted, her body trembling from cold and effort, but a feeling of victory, however precarious, warmed her heart. She had secured the hunt. The village would have food, but the battle wasn't over. How would she get the moose home, and how would she keep the leopards away while doing it? The tundra, in its merciless generosity, had shown the way, but now the challenge was to transform this gift into sustenance for her people. Anya, her body exhausted and mind-racing, faced the leopard pack surrounding her. The growls, once confused, now became more coordinated, a symphony of threat that made the ice beneath her feet vibrate. The moose, semi-buried in the snow, was a promise of life for the village, but also an anchor that bound her to that treacherous valley. How to move such a massive creature alone, and how to ward off 1,300 hungry predators who, with each passing second, seemed more determined to claim the prey. Anya closed her eyes for an instant, seeking the calm Nyla always taught. Anya, the strongest wind doesn't fell the tree that knows how to bend. Use the tundra's strength to your advantage. Her grandmother's voice was a balm to her soul. She opened her eyes, sweeping the landscape again, not looking for an exit, but a tool. The ice mound beside her, the deep snow, the biting wind that was beginning to intensify, raising whirlwinds of flakes. It was then that she noticed a peculiar formation. Further on, following the line of the ice mound, there was a natural depression in the terrain, almost a groove that seemed to deepen towards the valley's exit. It was a path, a natural bed that snow and ice had carved over ages. If she could move the moose into that groove, perhaps the terrain's own incline, and the snow could help drag it. The idea was audacious. It required her to expose herself even more to the leopards, but the alternative was hunger, and that was unacceptable. With her spear, Anya began to work again, this time not to dig a barrier, but to clear a path to the groove. She pushed the snow with the tip of her spear, opening a narrow but firm trail for the moose's body. The leopards watched, their yellow eyes following every movement, curiosity mixed with impatience. The scarred male took a step forward, a louder growl escaping his throat. Anya ignored him, focusing on the task. She needed a distraction. She looked at the sky. The clouds thickened, promising more snow. The wind howled, and she felt the change in air pressure. A storm was brewing. It was her chance. With a Herculean effort, Anya began to push the moose. The heavy body barely moved. She used her spear as a lever, planting it in the snow and bracing it against the animal's body, pushing with all her might. Her muscles screamed, but the image of Nayla, frail and hungry, gave her renewed strength. Slowly, inch by inch, the moose began to slide. The leopards, noticing the prey's movement, became even more agitated. Some advanced, but Anya, with a guttural cry, struck her spear against the ice, creating a sharp sound that made them recoil for an instant. It was a bluff, but it worked. She continued to push, sweat streaming down her forehead, freezing on her temples. Finally, with one last desperate push, the moose fell into the groove. The heavy body slid a little down the natural incline, gaining an unexpected momentum. She grabbed the animal's legs, using her own strength and the slope to guide it. It was slow, agonizingly slow, but it was moving. As she dragged the moose, Anya felt the first snowflakes of the approaching storm. The wind intensified, turning into a gale that lifted snow from the ground, creating a white curtain that obscured vision. The leopards, caught off guard by the sudden change in weather, began to disperse slightly, seeking shelter or trying to maintain formation amidst the chaos. It was the perfect distraction. Anya couldn't see the leopards clearly, but she knew they couldn't see her either. The tundra, once again, had become her ally. She continued to drag the moose through the groove, each step a battle against the weight and the wind. The snow accumulated rapidly, covering her tracks and the moose's, transforming the valley into a white labyrinth. The village seemed a distant mirage, but Anya felt she was closer than ever. The promise to Nayla, the hope of her people, guided her through the blizzard's blindness, a beacon of warmth amidst the relentless cold. She would not stop. Anya didn't stop. Every inch the moose slid through the groove was an arduous victory against its inert weight and the blizzard's fury. The wind howled like a chorus of ancient spirits, whipping snowflakes so dense that the world around her became a white, indistinct canvas. Her eyes, already almost closed by the layer of ice forming on her lashes, could barely discern the path ahead. The spear, now more a support than a weapon, served to test the depth of the snow, which rapidly swallowed her ankles with each step. The leopard's growls, once clear, were now muffled and distorted by the gale. But Anya felt their presence. They didn't see her, but the scent of the prey and the sound of her effort guided her. The pack, though disoriented, was adapting, moving like ghostly shadows through the haze, encircling her again. She could feel the air vibrate with tension, the imminent danger. Anya's body trembled not just from cold, but from exhaustion. Her muscles screamed in protest, and her breath came out in dense, painful clouds. The image of Nayla, with her sunken eyes and frail body, was the only thing that kept her from giving in. "For them," she murmured to herself, her voice almost inaudible against the wind's roar. "For the village." Suddenly, the groove deepened slightly, and the moose gained an unexpected momentum, sliding faster. Anya had to cling tightly to the animal's legs to avoid being dragged. It was then that she saw, not with her eyes, but with the keen intuition of her people. The blizzard, in its fury, was creating something. Further on, where the groove widened slightly, a large mass of soft snow accumulated, driven by the wind, forming a kind of unstable dune. And beneath it, the ice seemed thinner, more treacherous. An idea, audacious and dangerous, ignited in her mind. "Anya, the tundra gives you the tools," Nayla's voice whispered, clear as an ice bell. She had to use the storm itself. With renewed effort, Anya steered the moose. She couldn't push it out of the groove, but she could guide its slide. The leopards were closer now. She could hear the scraping of their claws on the ice, the low, urgent growls approaching. It was now or never. With her spear, Anya began to strike the ice at the bottom of the groove, just ahead of the moose, but not to break it. She was creating vibrations, a hollow sound that reverberated beneath the snow. The leopards, confused by the unusual sound in the midst of the blizzard, paused for an instant. It was the time she needed. With a throat-ripping cry, Anya pushed the moose with all her remaining strength, directing it towards the unstable snow dune. The moose's heavy body hit the base of the dune. The snow, already soft and loose, didn't resist. With a muffled but powerful sound, the dune gave way, releasing a cascade of snow that spread across the valley. It wasn't an avalanche, but a white, dense and cold wave that swept through the area where the leopards were regrouping. The felines were caught by surprise, swallowed by the mass of snow, growling and struggling to free themselves. Their vision was completely obscured, and the scent of the prey, once again, was masked by the fresh snow. Anya didn't wait. The moose, propelled by the sliding snow, continued its journey through the groove, now faster. She clung to it, using the momentum to move. The blizzard, which had once been an enemy, had become her accomplice. She could feel the valley opening up, the incline lessening. The wind still howled, but she felt a change, a slight decrease in intensity, as if the storm was beginning to calm, exhausted from its own fury. Tears of relief and exhaustion streamed down her face, freezing instantly. The moose was safe. The leopards were behind, disoriented and for now defeated. The village, the promise, she had succeeded. The climax of her journey was not a battle of brute force, but a dance of cunning and resilience with the tundra itself. Anya, her body aching and spirit unbroken, knew that the path home would still be long and arduous. But the most dangerous part was over. Hunger would be averted. The light of Nayla and the village would not be extinguished. Anya continued to drag the moose, the natural groove now becoming a crucial ally. The blizzard, like an exhausted fury, lessened its momentum, revealing faint contours of the landscape. The leopard's growls, once so present, were now just distant echoes, lost in the wind that still blew, but with less vehemence. She knew they had been outsmarted. The storm and her cunning had defeated them. A deep sigh, laden with relief and a searing pain in her muscles, escaped her cracked lips. With each step, the promise to Nayla and the village became more tangible. The moose, though young, was an immense burden. Anya, with her spear, began to improvise. She planted the tip in the snow ahead of the animal's body and, using the shaft as a lever, managed to slightly lift one of its hind legs, securing it with a leather strap she always carried. Then, with another strap, she tied the other leg, creating a kind of improvised harness. The snow in the groove, compacted by the previous slide, offered less resistance. She leaned in, pulling with all her might, her feet firm on the ice. Nyla's wisdom, which spoke of the ingenuity of the YAKUT people, echoed in her mind. Anya, even the heaviest stone can be moved with the right lever. She didn't have a lever, but she had her spear and her will. Hours passed, or perhaps it was only minutes in the time distortion imposed by exhaustion. The sky began to lighten, a pale greyish blue replacing the storm's darkness. The first lights of dawn painted the distant mountains with cold shades of purple and pink. Anya felt a warmth in her chest, not from the sun that had not yet fully appeared, but from hope. She recognized the rock formations, the gnarled trees that marked the valley's entrance. The village was near. Her steps, though heavy, gained a new rhythm. The image of Nyla sitting by the fire with a faint but grateful smile was her reward. Finally, the silhouette of the first cabins emerged through the snow haze. Smoke from the chimneys, a sign of life and warmth, danced in the icy air. Anya stopped, her entire body trembling, but her heart bursting with emotion. She had succeeded. The moose, now more a promise than a burden, was there, dragged by her strength and determination. The first sounds of the village began to reach her ears, the distant bark of a dog, the creak of a wooden door. She released the improvised ties, her spear falling softly into the snow. There was no more danger, only the way home. A young hunter, who was on morning patrol, was the first to see her. His eyes widened in disbelief and then in admiration. He ran towards Anya, shouting, his voice breaking the morning silence. Other villagers began to emerge from their cabins, drawn by the shouts and the sight of the young figure, almost a statue of ice and snow beside the large moose. Worried faces transformed into expressions of relief and joy. Older women wept silently, men nodded in respect. Anya, her lips blue but a sparkle in her eyes, simply pointed to the moose. Hunger would be averted. The promise was fulfilled. The village was saved. Nyla, in her cabin, would soon feel the warmth of the fire and the smell of fresh meat. Human connection, the resilience of a people, manifested in the figure of a young YAKUT woman who defied the tundra and 1,300 leopards emerging victorious. She was living proof that the YAKUT spirit could not be broken. The young hunter, Boris, knelt beside the moose, touching its dense fur with reverence. His eyes, previously filled with worry, now shone with silent admiration. Other men approached, examining the prey with experienced gazes, their strong hands assessing how to butcher the animal. The women, their faces marked by the cold and hard life, surrounded Anya, their gloved hands touching her shoulders, her arms, in gestures of affection and gratitude. There was no need for words. The relief was palpable in the icy air. An elder woman with deep wrinkles that told stories of countless winters took off her own fur scarf and carefully wrapped it around Anya's neck, whose lips trembled slightly. "You are the strength of our people, little Anya," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. Anya felt a warmth spread through her chest, a warmth that didn't come from fire, but from that recognition, that shared love. Her eyes welled up, but she refused to cry. There was one last step. "Nyla," she managed to say, her voice weak but firm. "I need to see Nyla." Immediately, a group of women offered to accompany her. They guided her gently, almost carrying her, while the men began the task of transporting the moose to the center of the village, where it would be prepared. The smell of smoke and the promise of food began to mingle in the air. dispelling the ghost of hunger that hung over them. Upon entering Nyla's cabin, the warmth of the fire enveloped her like an embrace. Nyla was sitting on her fur bed, her eyes fixed on the door, her expression of worry transforming into a glimmer of hope upon seeing Anya. The grandmother extended her trembling hand. Anya knelt beside her, taking the wrinkled hand and kissing it. "I did it, Nyla," Anya murmured, tears finally streaming, but they were tears of joy and relief. "The moose is out there. The village will have food." Nyla squeezed Anya's hand with surprising strength. A slow, radiant smile lit up her face. "I knew it, my little warrior. I knew you would bring the light back." Her eyes filled with deep love and pride. "Your cunning, your heart. They are the true treasure of the tundra." As the news spread, the entire village mobilized. The moose was efficiently butchered, and large pieces of meat were placed over the fire, the smoky scent filling the air. The children, previously quiet and pale, now ran and laughed, their faces lit up by the prospect of a hearty meal. Night fell, but the village was brighter than ever, illuminated by bonfires and renewed joy. Anya, sitting beside Nyla, watched the scene. She had bathed and changed clothes, but exhaustion still weighed on her bones. Nevertheless, the sight of her people laughing, eating, and sharing stories was the greatest reward. Boris approached, offering her a piece of roasted meat. "You saved us, Anya. You are the bravest of us all." Anya merely smiled, accepting the food. She didn't feel like a hero, just someone who had fulfilled a promise. But the gratitude in her people's eyes was undeniable. The story of her journey, of how she overcame the 1,300 leopards and the tundra's fury, would be told for generations. She had proven that true strength lies not just in muscles, but in wisdom, compassion, and the unwavering will to protect those we love. The YAKUT spirit, forged in ice and wind, would continue to shine, guided by the light of young people like Anya, who, with their altruism and resilience, ensured that life would always find a way, even in the icy depths of Yakutia. The village, united and warm, celebrated not only the food, but the hope Anya had brought back. Anya, sitting beside Nyla, observed the scene with a gentle smile, the weariness still present but overshadowed by deep satisfaction. The warmth of the fire, the children's laughter, and the murmur of conversations were a melody of life, the sweetest she had ever heard. Nyla, her hand in Anya's hair, caressed it tenderly. "You didn't just bring food, my granddaughter," Nyla whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You brought back faith, faith in ourselves, in our ability to overcome." Anya turned to her grandmother, her eyes shining. "It was your wisdom, Nyla. Your words guided me every step of the way." The elder shook her head, a look of profound pride on her wrinkled face. "Wisdom is a river, Anya. I merely showed you the path to the source, but it was you who drank from it and became the current." In the days that followed, the village flourished with renewed energy. The moose meat was carefully processed, some of it consumed fresh, some smoked and dried for future months. The women worked together, sharing tasks and stories, while the men reinforced cabins and prepared new traps, with a vigor that seemed to have been awakened by Anya's courage. The children, with full bellies and curious eyes, followed Anya wherever she went, asking to hear the story of the 1,300 leopards again. Anya, with gentle patience, recounted the adventure, but always emphasized that it was not just her strength, but her cunning and connection with the tundra, and the promise to her grandmother and the village that led her to victory. She spoke of the importance of observing, of listening to the wind, of respecting animals, and of never losing hope. Boris, the young hunter, became her closest companion on patrols and daily tasks. He observed her with an admiration that went beyond respect for a huntress. There was a reverence for the wisdom she embodied. You taught us that the greatest danger isn't the cold or the predators, Anya, he said one day as they mended a protective fence. It's hopelessness. You showed us that it can be overcome. Anya smiled, a smile that warmed the icy air. She had understood that her feat wasn't just about hunting, but about inspiring. Her journey had rekindled the community spirit, reminding everyone that the strength of a people lies in unity and mutual care. The village, once on the brink of despair, now stood stronger, more cohesive. Nights were filled with songs and dances, celebrations not only of newfound abundance, but of the unwavering resilience of its people. Nyla, sitting by the fire, watched Anya, who now moved with serene confidence. The young woman was no longer just the granddaughter caring for her grandmother, but the guardian of a flame, the embodiment of the promise that life would always find a way, even in the most adverse conditions. Anya knew that the tundra would always present new challenges, new relentless winters, new scarcities, but she felt no fear. She had learned that true strength was not in fighting against nature, but in dancing with it, in using its wisdom and elements to her advantage. She had proven that the YAKUT spirit, forged in ice and wind, was indomitable. And as long as there was a promise to fulfill, a heart to warm, and a village to protect, Anya's light would continue to shine, a beacon of hope in the icy depths of Yakutia, ensuring that human connection and altruism would prevail over any adversity. Anya's story was not just about a hunt, but about the eternal dance of life and hope, a legacy for all generations.